Mr. Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan is a really good scheme for those on the lower end of the wage scale who get up early in the morning, who work and are looking to be able to purchase their own house and aspire to own their own home. Demand in Kildare is particularly high for this scheme. Can you outline how much your department has allocated to Kildare County Council for loans to be allocated out under the Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan, and but the initial amount that was granted, and has any subsequent top-ups been given to Kildare County Council for the Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan?
Yes. Thank you, Lascan Corla. When the Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan scheme was initially being developed, it was estimated that the drawdown of loans would be approximately €200 million over 3 years. However, this loan product has proved to be more successful than initially anticipated, and in the context of the scheme's success, my department engaged with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform and the Department of Finance with regard to the allocations for 2019. I engaged early, as I said I would, and while discussions commenced in October of 2018 on additional funding, the first tranche of €200 million was only fully drawn down in August of this year. My department wrote to all 31 local authorities on the 15th of August of this year, sanctioning an additional €363 million in funding for the Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan. This brings the total funding for the loans to over €563 million for 2018 and 2019 combined alone. Kildare County Council's total allocation for the period of the 1st of February 2018 to the 31st of December 2019 has been increased to some €20.9 million. The allocation for Meath has been increased to €35.8 million for the same period. These overall allocations incorporate loans already issued since the inception of the scheme, loans which will be drawn down on foot of approvals already issued, and projected loan demand for the rest of 2019.
Deputy Heydon.
For his response, Lascan Corla, Kildare County Council gives 6 months for approved applicants to draw down their allocated loan under the Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan Minister. And if it's not drawn down after the 6 months, they then recycle the money and it's given back to the next applicant in the queue. But a big issue I'm encountering is the length of time people have to wait after they've applied. It's very difficult to rent and to save for a deposit as well at the same time. And also at the same time, people are looking at, if they get that allocation, they have 6 months to try and find the right house to be able to go and seal the deal on, if you like. A lot of the issue I'm finding that I'm coming across, Minister, is actually the fact that we have multiple applicants, and this is a particular issue in Kildare and I'm sure the Greater Dublin area, Meath and Wicklow as well, where people are applying to a number of different county council lists for the Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan. Have you considered a national register where maybe the Housing Finance Agency could act as an overall overarching body that could look at where people have applied in more than one county, and when they are allocated in one county, they're then knocked off the other list, to give the opportunity for other people in Kildare who are waiting on that list, and it can take 6 months for the person in front of them not to draw down that money. We need to get that recycled quicker and get it back into the system quicker.
Minister, 1 minute.
Thank you, Corla, and thank you, Deputy, for the follow-up question. The 6-month drawdown that people who receive approval for the Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan is standard within the industry. I know that there have been some delays at the processing stage, people wanting the credit committee of the local authority to meet again more quickly to get approvals turned around. The HFA, or the housing agency, which is the overseer in terms of the first line for approval or decline, are operating to very efficient timelines. But I think the Deputy makes a good point in terms of the duplications that are in the system. So you can apply to different local authorities, and as a result, it can, for a period of time, give an uncertainty around the actual, I suppose, headroom that's left in the local authority in terms of the funding that's been approved or allocated from central government to the local authority. So one of the things that we've discussed with the Department of Public Expenditure and Reform is new reporting requirements for local authorities, that each month they have to actually report back to the housing agency so we can see actually where duplication might be, where a loan is being drawn down. In relation to an enhanced role for the housing agency, or indeed the housing finance agency, given the role that they already play in terms of trying to manage duplications better, in terms of, say, for example, a national register, I think it's a good idea. It's something that is under active consideration at the moment by me in terms of how we can further improve this very desirable low-interest mortgage.
Deputy Heydon, supplementary, and then one.
Thank the Minister for the response. I think Kildare's figures are a good example as to why that's necessary, Minister, because of the 21 million almost that you say is open to Kildare County Council to now draw down, they've only asked their members to approve 15 million, and because there has only been a drawdown of just a little over 10 million. That's an awful lot of people still waiting on a list, contacting my office, contacting me, who want to get a Rebuilding Ireland home loan and are stuck in that system. So I do think where there is duplication, definitely measures in that regard would be very helpful. Also, Minister, the area of the income limits, 50,000 for a single and 75,000 for a couple. You know, if you are, and I've dealt with a number of cases like this, public servants in their 30s who are high up the increment scale, or people working in the private sector, it's not too hard to get just on or above the €50,000, yet you come across very few banks being able to give mortgages to people in that space who are on less than 60,000. So we still have a cohort of people there, both single and couples, who are missing out between the Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan and what the banks are lending. But you know, this Rebuilding Ireland loan is a really good step in that direction. But I do think if there was a review of those limits, a slight increase in them should be considered, and maybe also a consideration of while there is a maximum level, maybe consideration of a minimum level, because I do think it is a vulnerability in the scheme that there is no minimum level there either for the local authority to bring in.
Just 1 second, Minister. A short supplementary from Deputy O'Brien.
Yes, Corla, and thank you, deputies, for the follow-on questions. Just in the last point that Deputy O'Brien raised, I mean, it would be an awful thing if couples were going out looking at homes based on an expectation of a mortgage they weren't going to get. That just, you know, kills your kind of hopes and dreams right out the gate. So I will look at that issue in relation to whether or not the calculator and the credit committee are out of kilter. In relation to Deputy Heydon's request to look at the income limits, I won't be looking at the income limits for the time being. The 50,000 for an individual and the 75,000 for a couple are in line with the other affordability requirements that we are bringing in. They are new in terms of these new products, the Rebuilding Ireland Home Loan or the affordable housing, so we will keep it under review into the future, but for the time being they are set. But in relation to the examples that you gave of people who might be just above those limits, a very interesting thing to look at, I think, is the banks, and banks don't come under me, but the exceptions latitude that they do have to give exceptions. Are those exceptions going to higher earners? Because surely those exceptions should be going to lower earners who actually need that help and not the higher earner. And so I would like to have a bit more information about that. Obviously the central bank and the banks are independent of me and my department, but where the banks have exceptions policy, I think that they should be making sure that it's not just going to people who are higher earners, because that, I think, undermines the whole point of having an exception, flexibility within your own lending criteria. Thank you.
Deputy Richard Boyd Barrett, and I think the Minister, you're grouping these questions. Deputy Barrett to present his question.